Cheers and welcome everyone to my YouTube video and Kontomblé update. The theme for this transmission that I'm going to share with you all is visioning the village and rebirth days and our great rebirthings. And so these themes have just come to me now. At the end of this video, there is going to be a divination that I share, where it's an excerpt of a voice divination where the Kontomblé have shared with me that they want me to make it available to you all. So beforehand, I'm just going to share some things from my heart and share on some themes that they are guiding me to speak on. When I speak like this, it's like they're with me, sort of showing me the way. So with that being said, I want to start with a little grounding and anchoring prayer to set the space for your experience today of receiving what is going to be shared and also receiving the divination at the end of this video. So wherever you are in your day, if you just want to take a moment and have a little pause and journey on this little journey into this little grounding intention with me, be oh so appreciated, and yes, very beautiful thing. So thank you. Okay. And so just closing your eyes, taking a deep breath in through your nose and exhaling with a big sigh. Signaling to the nervous system it's okay to release and unwind and receive. And again, inhaling. And one more big, beautiful breath. Inhaling all the way into your low belly, feeling it expand. And releasing and receiving. Yes, and so just staying with this and sending some roots down from the base of your spine with a thick grounding cord like the taproot of a great grandmother tree, sending that down through all of the layers of the earth, establishing your anchor into Mother Earth's core. Aligning heart, womb, and crown with Mother Earth's core, and visualizing a beautiful bubble of selenite energy around you, forming this beautiful bubble of protection, iridescence, and love. From this grounded and connected place, I honor and acknowledge all of our healthy and supportive ancestors, all of our guides and guardians, all of the beings who walk with us, the tall ones and small ones and winged ones too, for the absolute love they are and have always been for each one of us. I ask that a field of protection is maintained around all future listeners, around each and every one of you, so as not to allow anything to enter this space of this transmission unless it is for the highest good and completely aligned, 100% aligned with true source. Thank you, Creator. Thank you, God Goddess. And so it is. Beautiful. And so you can release that. Thank you for going on that brief little anchoring journey with me. I find it ever essential these days to begin any space where I weave and walk with spirit with anchoring in. And there's so many reasons why. I may get into some of them today, but where I really want to begin is with this topic of rebirthing. And I'd like to share on a personal note that this is a special time of year for me, this time of early November, because it's the time where I experienced in my early 20s my ultimate rebirthing. In my early 20s, I went through a series of near-death experiences that were essentially 2 concussions and one similar event that wasn't exactly a concussion, but in it I went to the same place. And without having to go into all the details, essentially what happened in each of these 3 occurrences was I had the full life review. My life flashed before my eyes, and I had the tunnel of light, and I went down the tunnel and then my spirit went to this otherworldly place. And the otherworldly place was this, I want to say, this arena of euphoria in so many ways. It was an arena of synesthesia. It was a place where I just was, and everything was very ecstatic and golden, and there was this most beautiful music that encompassed my being. And this music and frequency, it wasn't just something I heard, it was something I could see, feel, taste, and was all at once. And it had this very repetitive type of effect on my being, as in this moment of contact with that universal dimension, wherever in the dimensions it was. It repeated 3 times in each occurrence, and then also happened 3 times individually. So there's something about this innate number of 3 and the sacredness of 3 that happens across all kinds of traditions and lineages. The 3 that's found in Christ consciousness, for example, and also the 3 with the triple goddess in a more primordial feminine sense of the way. And this also translates into the language of the Kontomblé, who often in their rhymes and riddles weave in 3s. And so I'm just kind of connecting now the some of perhaps the personal significance of that. You know, I'll make of it what I will in this moment of the 3s. So anyway, what happened the 3rd time that I had this concussion and I went to this place and I came back was that when I came back into my body, I had this very visceral, very distinct experience of coming back into my body. And I was working at the time at a pizza restaurant in Chicago when I was a working actress and student, and I was a hostess, and I was about to walk down the stairs, and I had hit my funny bone, and all the blood rushed to my head, and I fainted, and instead of falling down the stairs, I fell backwards, and I had this concussion. And when I came to, there was a bunch of people surrounding me, and I had this distinct experience of hearing in my own head one voice say, "Who am I?" And a very distinctly different voice go, "Oh, I'm Aislinn again." And so this is a big topic to broach, but really what this was the arrival of an aspect of my higher self that had been kind of dormantly waiting to arrive into the body and dormantly waiting to come into the physical to be of service, finally arriving. And another aspect of myself that perhaps wasn't the most elevated and had been more, I would say, entrapped in and enrobed in the densities of physical reality, including the densities of physical history, as in this aspect of my being had lived many lifetimes, all different kinds. And this aspect of my higher self was of a different part of that. However you want to say, you know, there's so many terms you could use. You could say monad or oversoul, and what it is exactly, I'm not sure, but it was an aspect of this part of my being that came in that was unfamiliar to Earth and new to Earth and ready to weave and walk in a different way. And this is an aspect that so many of us who are a part of the current conversations of innovation in the world have ready and willing to come to life and come into being. And whether that is you in your soul's entirety as you were born into the earth, or whether you had a similar initiatory experience in your life where, as I like to call it, a modern form of initiation creates some happenstance or circumstance or accident wherein that part of you that has gone through the dark night of the soul and felt very lost, through its lostness, reaches out and calls upon that aspect of you that's waiting to be found. And that aspect of you that's waiting to be found then, through the signal flare that is sent out by the lost one, or the one stuck in the abyss, can now start to find its pathway home into the body, and then through that home into the life and the community and the world. And this is a huge process, and it can take people lifetimes, it can take years, and in indigenous cultures where the culture is intact, it can take one very important and a very effective initiation at the beginning of manhood or womanhood. So translated into modernity, what happens is we lose some of the swiftness of these initiations and some of the effectiveness. But also translated into modernity, what we get is the ingenuity and innovation of the spirits and our healthy and supportive ancestors, who are finding all sorts of very imaginative and very creative ways to get us ready to get to work. And so for me, this was the way, was these 3 near-death experiences, the third one coming back in and hearing very distinctly those 2 different voices, and on a deep soul level being rattled by it and not knowing exactly what to do with it for several years. And so it was a long journey of learning that those in fact were different aspects of myself that within my being were at odds with one another. They were at odds with one another. On one aspect, because the higher self was coming in and ready to get to work, but unfamiliar with the density of physical reality and how to actually make things happen, and also there to help bring healing to the other aspects of the one who was more entrapped in density, and then all the shadow that she contained and that came with her. And when I talk about her, yes, I do mean me, because it's all within this physical vessel. They're all aspects of me. So I use it as an example to share with you all about the modern forms of initiation and how they can unfold in this time. And there's a lot more that I could say about my journey on the other side of the initiation, which was just as an important part of it, and perhaps even more important. But to keep it simple, I think what I will say is that what ensued was several years of being pulled between these different aspects that were at odds with each other. I often think of, for those who are familiar with the Tarot, I think of the card of the 5 of Wands, where there's all these different opinions fighting within. And it was like, I couldn't quite choose what life path quite yet, because there were attachments still to this old trajectory of my identity, and then this very new part of my identity was coming in and revealing to me something that the old aspect couldn't conceive of. And so that was that stretching of the identity. And so when I talk about this time, it was a time where psychologically there was a lot going on. There was psychologically a lot of invasion, a lot of different frequencies moving within and out of the temple of my body. And it's not something that I would wish upon anyone, but it's also something that many people endure and go through right now. So it's important that we talk about it. And so what I had to learn as my healing journey began and my healing path began was I had to learn how to identify these aspects of myself, and then how to know which one truly was me, and then how to kind of wield the sword of my truth and my perception to structurally uncouple these other aspects and attachments from my being. And again, there's a whole other way that I could go into talking about this that would take a lot longer than what I intend today. So for the sake of kind of sticking to the theme and the sake of simplicity, what ended up being a 7-8 plus year journey, one that I'm still continuing on the healing spiral of, it resulted in me finding my path as a diviner and a healer, and one who, because I went through those throes of modern initiation in a very creative, innovative, and I want to say like ingenious way that Spirit provided, I now am able to walk a walk where I can try to be of service to others who are going through the same thing. And so one of the ways that we do that is being able to talk about it and share about it. And it's a little bit of a mystery to me, even how these topics intertwine, but I feel like I'm starting to be shown the thread as I share with you all. And it's the topic of this rebirth that I went through about 12 years ago now, and how so much of my 20s were dedicated to the journey of uncovering what really happened and stepping into my gifts and purpose in the world, and how this is something universally that so many of us walk through and walk with. It's a threshold so many of us go through. And one of the issues in modern times is that because we don't have these cultural contexts that are intact in terms of their earth-centeredness, the cultures that are anchored in the earth, those communities are not as intact as maybe they were in ancient times or in different places in the world with indigenous cultures. One of the major things that we were missing on the other side of initiation is acknowledgement. Being able to acknowledge A, that it happened and that's what it was, B, acknowledge the multidimensional aspects, and C, let alone acknowledge it yourself, have those in your life acknowledge it for you and with you. And this is something Subonfu Somé talks about in, I think in one of her books, I can't remember exactly which title right now, but she talks about how, I think it's the one on ritual, how when people come back from their, in Burkina Faso, in the Dagara Tribe, when they come back from their ritual of initiation, such an important part of the initiation is everyone acknowledging that they've been initiated and that there is a new person that is returning, that the person they once were is gone, and now the person who is here is a new being, and they get welcomed by the community, ready to live now in their purpose and reveal to themselves and everyone around them in the community what that is. So because many people don't even know that the experiences of accidents or near-death experiences or just dark night of the soul abysses that they go through in their lifetime, because they don't know that Spirit's attempt at initiation, people often miss, one, if not all of those A, B, and C steps of acknowledgement. So one of the reasons why I think that this topic would connect to the idea of visioning the village is because something that Kontomblé and Spirit pose to us at this time is how creative can we dare to be? How curious can we endeavor to be? How can our imagination start to open up these formerly locked rooms where inside those rooms there are all kinds of tools and perhaps some toys and perhaps some medicines and all kinds of like wizarding, contraptions that can help us recreate the heart of the village in a way that perhaps it never existed before. And one of the ways that we do that is by trusting ourselves to know that what the wisdom that we carry in our bones is of the utmost integrity and truth. And one of the ways that we trust that is by, in a way, I want to say, coupling ourselves to the earth, and coupling in the sense of like surrendering to her, in service to her dream. And so the Kontomblé, they talk about some of these things in the Divination that I'm going to share. They talk about the importance of discernment and, you know, how we can be ever increasingly sharpening the knife of our perception and our discernment in this sort of wild west modern world of frequencies that are being emitted all the time. They talk about this, and so I'll leave it to them to go into those particulars. But to come back around to this idea of visioning the village, the what once was is within us. What once was in ancient times is literally within our bones. Modern science is catching up with this, with the study of epigenetics and all of the genetic discoveries. But it's something that indigenous cultures all over the world always knew, and they didn't need any type of measuring tool to tell them this. Unless it was maybe like a stick or a stone or, you know, something of this nature. So my point here is that we are being invited by Spirit to ask these questions of, what is it going to take to trust ourselves and trust the wisdom within us enough to share what that wisdom is, enough to share those gifts with the world? And then perhaps an even more important step that comes beyond that, once we establish our self-trust, is how do we trust each other? Because we're not going to be able to take that next step forward without fully trusting each other. We're not going to be able to take that next step forward of just uncovering and remembering how an ancient village could possibly function in the modern world without trusting each other. How could we do that? How could we possibly do that? You know? And so this is so important. And it's like we can't do these things alone. And when I kind of read the collective meter and see where we are in terms of communities coming together and villages wanting to come to life and things being cultivated, when villages come together in little pockets and ways, they're working out these major distortion patterns. And these major distortion patterns that are rippling through, it's like such an ancient, deep collective healing that happens. And what I see and sense right now from the Kontomblé is that more reconciliation is needed. And also a big part of that is trust. That the way that we find reconciliation in these pockets of community and we build trust with each other is through surrender and taking one step at a time. How is trust built? It's through small actions over time. And so I just bring this all forward because it's things I've been meditating on, and I invite you to meditate on this and think on it and dream on it and imagine on it too. How can you start to open just a little bit more to things that, I want to say, open just a little bit more to trusting in things that maybe you formerly were protecting yourself from for good reason, but now by opening and trusting because you've done all these steps to grow and be able to now perhaps discern more clearly what truly is for you and what resonates with your heart. Now taking that one little step of trust, that's a threshold I find myself in, and I think it's such a necessary one for us to build communities, because we just can't do all that's being asked of us and all that we're being invited to do in terms of co-creating with Spirit, co-creating with our healthy and supportive ancestors, and co-creating with the little people and the spirits of the land a new way, a different way, the vision of the village way. So that's what I have to say today for you all. Thank you so much for journeying with me and staying on for this talk. It's always a pleasure to weave into these spaces and share them. And I thank you also for receiving the vulnerability of some of the details of my own journey that I shared at the beginning, and moving through that with me to get to some of these deeper questions and little heart seeds that have been planted in me that I want to share with you all. So with that, I I would like to start to transition into the divination. And so what will happen after this video or after this portion is that the sound will come on. Traditionally, you don't see the diviner, so it will just be the screen. And I invite you to take a moment to pause the video after this, maybe set your space with some offerings for the Kontomblé, who are the little people. They love honey, they love spirits in the form of liquor, vodka, whiskey, wine. They love nuts and seeds. They love candies if you unwrap them from the wrapper. So if there's anything like that around your house that you want to set out for them, and if there's nothing on hand, something as simple as a little bowl of water with a whispered intention can do for this. And I hope you enjoy, and just be gentle with yourself after listening to the recording, and allow some space and time for integration. Maybe a nice walk outside or in nature would be a beautiful way to integrate. All right, and if you have any questions for me, you can always reach out to me through my website. There's a contact form, singswithtrees.com. I've got some beautiful new offerings coming up for this late winter and the new year. So stay tuned. You can join my newsletter to hear more about them. And I can't wait to share more with you all soon. Okay, so much love to you all. Mwah. So you need to put your headphones on. Ola manga. You need to put your headphones on. Ola manga. As in you need to put the phone in your head on. Ola manga. Alabate elewa elewa. To tune into the zone. To tune into the zone of the headphone. You say when you put your headphone on, what station do you play? What songs do you say? What songs do you say? What songs do you speak into being? With the golden threads woven by the thrumming of the tongue. They say it's the tongue that thrums, it's the tongue that thrums, it's the tongue that thrums upon the drum of the mother. So they encourage us all to allow our tongues to thrum upon the drum of the mother, as in the heart that beats in our very own chest. They say it's your heart that knows best what's meant for you. They say, oh, what am I to do? What am I to do? What am I to do? Let's go ask Google. What am I to do? What am I to do? What am I to do? Let's go ask Instagram. What am I to do? What am I to do? What am I to do? Let's ask my Gmail account. An account of whom are you asking? An account of whom are you tasking? The silver and golden threads of your heart to something outside of you. So they ask us to be very aware of the frequencies that we feed and see. In the show, it's like, it's no different than what you feed a chicken. Do you feed the chicken grain? That you grew with your own hands? Or do you feed the chicken GMO soy? Do you allow your heart to be the drum upon which your tongue shall thrum? Or do you outsource it to some external toy? They say it's not called a device for no reason. They say devices are often avenues of division. And so they show the image of a like a small shovel. What would the term for that be? A small shovel that you'd hold in your hand, like a gardener's shovel. And they say, like, what tools are you putting in your hands? What grains do you feed to the sands of the mother's shore within your own heart? And they're saying, like, many of the body's pains felt in the womb of the mother have to do with the grains that we feed with greed. So as the grains are freed, so we feed. No game of greed. As the grains are freed, we learn how to better knead the dough into something that can feed the entire village. Manga! So free the grains of your mind so you may feed throughout all time the heart of the village that stands before you. This is the invitation that they have for you. They say we're going through a great disentangling. A great disentangling. They show like spiders' nests in the mind. They say the spider has disentangled its nest. They say the difference between a spider's nest and a spider's web is determined by what has become stuck in it. Is it something that must decay? Or something that must be born and fly away? And so they say we must become ever more attuned to the antennas of the they want to say like is it aluminum? It's not aluminum. Is it metallic? Perhaps in one way or another. They say the silicon spider. You must become attuned to the webs that would be threaded by the silicon spider. And not allow it to take up roost in the nest of our mind. They say the silicon spider, it weaves the web of the false mother between mind and time. It attempts to anchor in the timeline. Of the uprooted womb. They say, what else is the uprooted womb other than? They say these streams of hybridization that are artificial in nature. They say when genetically, a lineage, a hybridized lineage is artificial in nature. What does that do for Mother Earth? What does it do for Mother Earth? They say, off with her head. What does it do with Mother Earth? And what does it do for Mother Earth? Well, it would attempt to usurp her birth. Off with her head. So become ever attuned to the threads that would attempt to weave through the mind. We must never allow the silicon to enter the spine. They say the silicon spider, it aims for the spine. And it accesses it through the mind. They say not all spiders are not all spiders are artificial in nature. They say we must remember the grandmother's tongues that weave the webs of time and rhyme in our favor. The webs of time and rhyme and the ancestral flavors. Rosemary and thyme. I find blackberry wine. They say, how do we abate the thread of that false red? The blood spilt in the name of the silicon spider. Well, it's not as complicated as it might seem. They say the solution can be as simple as sitting with a squirrel. Sitting with the squirreliness of feelings that arise in you when you hear this. Sitting with the squirreliness of feelings that rise in you as you spear this thing that would attempt to make its home in your belly. Just as the squirrels gather their acorns and make a home for their nourishment. So must you learn to gather the acorns of your wisdom inside the heart of your inner tree. They say that inner tree, it hosts the hives for the bees. They say that inner tree is none other than the tree of life. They say those acorns of wisdom, they live within the nest of the tree. And they show that this is one and the same with the womb and the spine. So they say, put on your thimble, become very nimble, and start weaving with the threads of time that lay within your spine. Not all are meant to be dormant forever. And so as these great grandmothers awaken and rumble, and they show the mauna, they show these mountains who are steaming and misting and rising and writhing. So the lava churns deep inside our bellies. So that the acorns of wisdom may be kept warm. To be stored and stowed and shared through the winter. Do you gather all your acorns just to ensure that you'll make it through the winter? No. You do it on behalf of your entire village. They say what's missing from many of the conversations that are happening out in the world at this time is how do we better take care of one another? How do we give to one another? In ways that are beyond convention. In ways that are beyond congeniality. that in ways that overthrow regality. They say, of course, there is an innate sanctity in the wisdom of the ancestors. And they show the indigenous queens and the indigenous kings to walk with their bare feet across the land. Would a queen of indigenous nature call herself a queen? Would a king of indigenous nature call himself a king? They say when you are indigenous to nature, there's no separation between the kingdom and the queendom. Why would we even need to separate the crown from the ground when they're the one and the same after all? After all, the crown got moved from the ground. And then we confuse ourselves with all of these layers of separation. And so the emanation of one's, they say like innate indigenous nature, is a force that cannot be reckoned with. A force that cannot be wrecked by these artificial frequencies that would try to fly by. And so they're kind of laughing because there's a joyfulness about it where it's like, as we grow, we're learning. As we grow, we're learning how to live in a way that these threads don't touch anymore. Yes, they'll attempt to make contact, they'll attempt to cross wires. But as you spin your cocoon with the otherworldly silk of the grandmother's milk, it becomes easier to make a buffoon of these other types of energies and entities that would try to run one amok. So we don't become cocky about it, no. We don't become cocky because it's in that cockiness that that the cracks the cracks get filled with a lack of skill. So they say, with what caulk do you fill the crack? With what caulk do you fill the crack? With which clock do you time the task? They say, continue to rest in the waves and emanations of celebration. But don't let that remove your crown from the ground. No. And so they sing this little song and they say, like the true queens of the earth, no, there's no better crown than pouring mud over your head. There's no better crown than putting your head in the ground. And so they say, mask yourself in clay all day. But you won't find any other way until you bury your crown into the ground. Thank you, Kontomblé. Thank you.